Are you brave enough to stand alone? Welcome back to For Successful Life DH, where we explore the mindset and strategies to build a life of purpose and achievement. Today, we're tackling a tough question. Are you brave enough to stand alone? Have you ever wondered what would happen if everyone you love vanished tomorrow? Could you keep going without falling apart? Imagine this. One morning, you wake up to complete silence. No messages, no calls, no one waiting for you, no one checking in to see how you're doing. A chilling emptiness creeps in. Your heart pounds. Panic sets in. It feels like you're falling into an abyss with no safety net. But pause for a moment. Why does that thought terrify you so much? It's because deep down, you've never truly learned to live without someone else. Society has conditioned you to believe that happiness comes from relationships, from approval, from love given by others. But is that really true? If your self-worth depends entirely on external validation, then what do you genuinely own? Marcus Aurelius, the great Stoic emperor, once said, "You have power over your mind, not outside events." Realize this, and you will find strength. Here's a truth you need to face. If you don't learn to be whole on your own, you'll always live in fear. Fear of losing what lies beyond your control. You can't decide who stays or who leaves, but you can master yourself. And that mastery, that's ultimate freedom. Are you ready to break free? Because right now, I'm going to show you how to live with unshakable peace. Peace that doesn't depend on who's there or who isn't. 1. A shocking awakening, the reality check you need. It begins early in life. A child clings tightly to their mother's hand, terrified of being left behind. A teenager obsessively checks their phone every few minutes, desperate for a reply that validates their worth. An adult stays trapped in a toxic relationship, not because they're happy, but because they're terrified of what life might look like without it. From the moment we open our eyes to the world, we're wired to seek connection, to rely on others and measure ourselves through their gaze. But at what cost? Psychologists have found that the human brain is hardwired for attachment. Evolution taught us that survival depended on staying close to the tribe. Thousands of years ago, being abandoned meant certain death. No shelter, no food, no protection. This fear of separation is so deeply ingrained in our biology that even today, rejection triggers the same neural pathways in the brain as physical pain. Studies using fMRI scans reveal that when someone experiences social rejection, their brain lights up in the same areas as when they endure a physical injury. To your brain, losing connection feels like a wound. But here's the thing. In today's world, this fear is no longer a necessity. It's a trap. Society knows this and exploits it relentlessly. Everything around you is designed to keep you emotionally dependent. Social media thrives on your need to be seen, liked, and approved. Consumer culture whispers constantly that love, belonging, and admiration define your worth. The world murmurs in your ear, "You are not enough on your own." And without realizing it, you believe it. But what if you didn't? Epictetus, a former slave turned one of history's most influential Stoic philosophers, once said in discourses, "If you wish to be free, do not wish for anything that depends. Otherwise, you will always be a slave." How many people actually realize they're enslaved by this illusion? Most spend their entire lives shackled by the belief that happiness comes from being loved, accepted, or validated by others. They don't see that this dependence isn't natural. It's a choice. Think back for a moment. When was the last time you felt anxious because someone took too long to reply? Or when was the last time you changed your words, or even yourself, just to fit in? Or maybe it was the last time silence made you uncomfortable, not because you crave company, but because being alone felt unbearable? That discomfort, that's not loneliness, it's fear, the fear of facing yourself. There's a reason solitude feels so heavy. It strips away all distractions and forces you to confront who you truly are. Most people aren't afraid of being alone. They're afraid of what they'll discover when no one else is watching. But here lies true power. The moment you stop fearing your own company is the moment you become untouchable. The moment you no longer need anyone else to complete you, to validate or reassure you, is the moment you become truly free. Throughout history, many people have found strength in being alone. Take Seneca, for example. He was a Roman philosopher who Emperor Nero forced into exile. Instead of giving up, Seneca used his time alone to write some of his best work about being strong and self-reliant. He once wrote, "A person is unhappy even if they rule the world, if they don't feel complete on their own." Yet, most people are still scared of losing others. They expect love, attention, and for people to stay. When that doesn't happen, they fall apart. But what if we accepted things instead of expecting them? What if we chose to be whole instead of needing others? I knew a man once. Let's call him Alex. For years, his whole life revolved around one relationship. This woman was everything to him, his world, his purpose, his identity. Then one day, she left, and Alex felt like he lost himself too. He was lost, broken, and didn't know who he was without her. But in his darkest moment, Alex did something rare. He stopped running from being alone. He faced it. Through this, he rebuilt himself, not as half of a couple, but as a he stopped looking for someone else to fill the emptiness and filled it himself instead. The truth is, you don't need anyone to complete you. You've always been whole. The world just convinced you otherwise. So now the real question is, are you ready to unlearn what you've been taught? Because next, I'll show you exactly how to break free. 2. The key to Stoicism. Do you really need anyone to be happy? Happiness is fragile when it depends on things that can be taken away. Most people never realize this. They spend their whole lives thinking that fulfillment comes from others. Love, friendships, approval, belonging. But what happens when those things disappear? What happens when someone you rely on leaves? Do you break, or do you stay whole? The truth is, no one can give you happiness. They can make it better. They can share happy moments with you. But real happiness is something you either build inside yourself or spend your life chasing, never quite catching it. I once met a man who thought he had everything he needed: a great relationship, close friends, and a job everyone admired. His whole identity was tied to these things. Then, in just 6 months, it all fell apart. His relationship ended. His friends drifted away. and he lost the job that made him feel important. He was left looking at a version of himself he didn't recognize, lost without the roles he played for others. This is what most people fear, the moment when the world takes away everything. That makes them feel valuable, forcing them to face what's left. And often, what's left feels terrifyingly empty. Marcus Aurelius once wrote, "Choose not to be harmed, and you won't feel harmed. Don't feel harmed, and you haven't been." At first, this seems too simple, even unrealistic. But think about it. Pain, disappointment, and suffering don't come from what happens to you, but from how you see it, how you let it affect you. If someone leaving breaks you, it's not their absence that hurts. It's your belief that you needed them to feel whole. And that belief is a choice. Imagine for a moment that someone you love deeply, someone you depend on emotionally, suddenly disappears from your life. How do you feel? Do you fall apart? Or do you acknowledge the pain and move forward with strength? Most people panic immediately at the thought of such loss, not because they'll miss the person, but because they don't know how to exist without them. They've tied their sense of self to someone else, mistaking attachment for identity. But who are you when no one is there to reflect you back to yourself? This is the fear that keeps people trapped. They're not afraid of being alone. They're afraid of the silence that shows how dependent they really are. They mistake being alone for being empty when in reality, being alone is the foundation of true strength. The most powerful people in the world, the ones who can't be broken, have mastered this one thing. They've learned to stand alone, not because they reject love or connection, but because they refuse to make it necessary for their happiness. Society teaches you to believe that love, validation, and belonging are essential for a meaningful life. Every movie, every song, every story reinforces the idea that without someone beside you, you're incomplete. But what if it's the other way around? What if true happiness comes from becoming someone who doesn't need to search for it in others? Here's a way to test this. For one day, drop all expectations from others. Don't check your phone. Don't look for reassurance. Don't reach out hoping someone will make you feel valued. Instead, just be with yourself. Notice how uncomfortable it feels. That discomfort isn't loneliness. It's your mind adjusting to not depending on others emotionally. If you can stick with it, something amazing happens. You start to see that happiness was never something to borrow from others. It was always something you could build yourself. This isn't about cutting off relationships or isolating yourself. It's about changing how you see things. Love should be something you give and receive freely, not something you need to prop yourself up. Friendship should be a journey you share, not a way to feel good about yourself. The people in your life should be important to you, but you shouldn't need them to feel complete. Many people get stoicism wrong. They think it means being cold or distant. That's not true at all. Stoicism teaches the purest form of love, a love that's free, doesn't try to possess, and isn't afraid of change. To truly love someone is to know you don't own them, and your happiness doesn't depend on them being there. It's saying, I appreciate you, I enjoy you, but I don't need you to feel whole. Remember that man who lost everything. He didn't fix his life by finding someone new to fill the emptiness. He fixed it by realizing there was never really any emptiness to begin with. He had just forgotten how to stand on his own. When he truly accepted that he alone was responsible for his happiness, everything changed. His relationships got better. His friendships meant more. And he wasn't afraid of loss anymore because he had found what he was looking for inside himself. Ask yourself, are you looking for happiness in others because you truly value them? Or because you're scared of who you are without them? If it's the second reason, your next step is clear. You don't need to leave people behind. You don't need to run from love. But you do need to learn how to be at peace when it's just you and the quiet. Because if you can master that, you can master anything. 3. Building inner strength. Real strength isn't about looking fearless or pretending nothing bothers you. It's about staying strong when facing loss, change, and uncertainty. Most people feel falsely secure, thinking the things and people around them will always be there. But Stoicism teaches something different. Everything outside of you is temporary. And only what you build inside yourself can't be shaken. If you can learn to let go of what you can't control, you'll build a foundation that no setback, betrayal, or loss can destroy. Here are 3 powerful Stoic exercises to help you build this kind of strength. Exercise 1. Write down everything you could lose. Most people don't realize how much they cling to things until they have to imagine life without them. This exercise is meant to show those attachments and, more importantly, to help you break free from them. Take a piece of paper and list everything in your life that you could lose. Relationships, things you own, your status, opportunities. Be completely honest. If it can be taken away, put it on the list. Don't hold back. This isn't about being grateful. It's about facing reality. Once you have your list, go through each item and ask yourself, if I lost this, would I still be okay? At first, this question might scare you. Your mind doesn't like the idea of loss and wants to believe things will last forever. But sit with that uncomfortable feeling. Look at each item and make yourself face a hard truth. Everything outside of you is temporary. Your job, your partner, your friends, even your health. None of these are guaranteed. The more you resist this fact, the more power these things have over you. There was once a Roman general who, at the peak of his success, would whisper to himself, "Remember that you will die." This wasn't being negative, it was being clear-headed. By always reminding himself that he would die someday, he made sure that nothing, no victory, no wealth, no title, could ever make him too comfortable. He was free from thinking that anything outside himself could define him. You need to do the same. Your list isn't meant to make you worried. It's meant to set you free. If you can accept that you might lose everything, you won't live in fear of losing it anymore. This is where real strength starts, the ability to stand strong in chaos. Knowing that no matter what's taken from you, you remain unbroken. Now, take this practice a step further. For 1 week, step back from the things you depend on. Don't reach out to friends for reassurance. Don't look for validation on social media. Don't use distractions to avoid silence. If you feel uneasy, if not being connected makes you restless, recognize that feeling for what it is, your mind adjusting to not depending on others emotionally. Let yourself feel it, and then watch as it fades away. you'll find that you don't need as much as you thought. Things you once considered essential are really just nice to have, not necessities. After a week, look at your list again. You might be surprised to see that losing some things doesn't seem as scary anymore. This shows you're changing. You're moving from someone who fears loss to someone who understands that nothing truly belongs to us. This is stoic freedom, not about not having love or connections, but about being able to thrive whether you have them or not. Exercise 2. Learning to be free from praise and criticism. There was a young artist who spent years getting better at his craft. Every time he finished a painting, he'd eagerly show it to others, waiting to see how they'd react. If they liked it, he felt proud and motivated. If they criticized it, he felt discouraged and doubted himself. Over time, he realized something troubling. He wasn't painting for himself anymore. His work wasn't about expressing his thoughts or feelings. It was about pleasing others, about getting their approval. And in that realization, he saw he was trapped. Most people are trapped in the same way. It's an invisible cage, but it controls them. It decides their choices, their goals, even their feelings. They don't act based on what they think is right. They act based on what will get them praise or help them avoid criticism. But what if you could be free? What if you could live your life without always looking over your shoulder, waiting for someone else to tell you if you're good enough? Think about the last time someone praised you. Maybe they said you were talented, hardworking, or attractive. Did it make you feel valuable? Now think about the last time someone criticized you. Maybe they doubted you, dismissed your efforts, or questioned your abilities. Did it make you feel small? If either of these reactions sound familiar, it means you're still letting other people's opinions shape who you are. That's not freedom, that's dependence. There was once an old fisherman who lived in a small village. He'd go out to sea every morning, no matter the weather. Some days he'd come back with a boat full of fish, and the villagers would celebrate him as a skilled fisherman. Other days he'd come back empty-handed, and they'd shake their heads, calling him unlucky. But the fisherman never reacted. He never boasted on good days, and he never got upset on bad ones. When someone asked why, he simply said, "The ocean gives, and the ocean takes, but I remain the same." That's the mindset you need to develop. Praise doesn't make you better. Criticism doesn't make you worse. You're not defined by what others say about you. You're defined by what you consistently do, whether anyone is watching or not. Here's your challenge. For 1 week, do something without telling anyone. Work hard without expecting a reward. Help someone without needing them to acknowledge it. Make a decision without asking for reassurance. Notice how you feel. Do you feel restless, like your effort doesn't matter if no one knows about it? That's the addiction talking. Society has taught you to believe that effort only matters if it's seen. That success is only real if it's recognized. But that's not true. If you can complete this challenge, something will change inside you. Other people's opinions will start to matter less. The noise of the world will quiet down, and in that silence, you'll hear your own voice. Maybe for the first time in years. Not the voice that asks, "What will they think?" but the voice that asks, "What do I want?" Once you stop looking for validation, you gain something much more valuable: clarity. You start making decisions based on your own values, not based on what will get you approval. And that's when you become truly unshakable. But there's still one more step. It's not just words and opinions that control you. It's also comfort. If you want to be truly strong, you must learn how to embrace discomfort instead of running from it. That's where we go next. Exercise 3. Turn being alone into your superpower. There's a man who walks into a restaurant alone. He sits by the window, orders his meal, and eats in silence. Around him, couples are laughing, friends are talking, and families are sharing stories. He doesn't check his phone to escape the moment. He doesn't look around to see if anyone is watching. He's just there, fully present, completely content. To most people, this image is uncomfortable. Being alone in public, without distractions, without excuses, feels unnatural. But why? Society has taught you to believe that being alone is a punishment. That if you're alone, it must mean something is wrong, that you're unloved, unwanted, or missing out. But the greatest minds in history understood the truth. Being alone is not loneliness, it's power. The ability to be alone, to sit in silence, to enjoy your own company without needing constant stimulation, is one of the most underrated superpowers in the modern world. Here's your challenge. Go somewhere alone, a cafe, park, or new city. Anywhere that forces you to be with yourself. No phone for distractions, no friends to talk to, no social media to document it. Just you and the moment. Sit in the discomfort. Observe how your mind reacts. Do you feel restless, anxious? Do you feel the need to escape, to fill the silence with something? That feeling isn't loneliness. It's dependence being exposed. For most of your life, you've used people, conversations, and digital noise as a shield against yourself. But to be truly strong, you must break through that shield. The goal isn't to reject connection. It's to no longer need it to feel complete. True independence isn't about pushing people away. It's about knowing that if everyone left, you'd still be standing unshaken. Think about the people you admire most, who walk with confidence and live with purpose. What do they all have in common? They're not desperate for company. They're not constantly seeking validation. They don't rely on others to feel at peace. They stand alone not because they have to, but because they can. That's the difference between dependence and strength. After this challenge, something will shift inside you. The fear of being alone will start to fade. You'll begin to enjoy your own presence, to embrace the quiet instead of running from it. And when you choose to be around others, it will no longer come from a place of need, but from a place of abundance. You won't seek people to fill a void. You'll share your time because you want to, not because you fear solitude. This is the kind of power that cannot be taken from you. The kind of strength that allows you to move through life on your own terms. The kind of freedom that makes, but solitude is just the beginning. Once you've mastered the art of being alone, you must take it one step further. You must learn how to thrive in discomfort, to find peace even in the most difficult moments. And that's where we go next. You've now taken 3 steps toward unshakable strength, faced your fears of loss, freed yourself from the need for validation, and embraced solitude as a source of power. But there's still one truth you must accept, one that will determine whether you remain bound or finally become free. For a truth you must accept. There's a moment in life that we all experience, yet few are truly prepared for. It's the moment you realize that no matter how many people surround you, no matter how deeply you love, no matter how much you give, at the end of it all, you stand alone. Some people spend their entire lives avoiding this truth. They distract themselves with relationships, seeking comfort in the presence of others. They convince themselves that as long as they have someone by their side, they're safe from the loneliness that lurks in the silence. But reality doesn't work that way. People leave, people change, people die, and when that moment comes, when life strips away the illusion of permanence, what will you have left? I once met a man who had built his entire life around his marriage. His wife wasn't just his partner, she was his emotional anchor, his purpose, his very identity. They'd been together for over 2 decades, and in all that time, he'd never once imagined a life without her. Then one day, she was gone, not because of betrayal, not because of conflict, but because life is unpredictable. A sudden illness took her away, and in an instant, everything he knew and believed in collapsed. He wasn't just grieving the loss of his wife, he was grieving the loss of himself. For months, he wandered through life like a ghost, a shadow of his former self. He couldn't function, couldn't think, couldn't find meaning in anything. He'd placed all his happiness, his stability, his very reason for being in another person's hands. And when that person was taken away, he was left with nothing, not because he'd loved too deeply, but because he'd never learned how to stand alone. This is the stark reality that Stoicism forces us to confront. You came into this world alone, and you will leave it alone. This isn't meant to be a depressing thought. It's meant to be a liberating one. Because once you truly accept this, you stop fearing the inevitable. You stop clinging to things that were never yours to hold on to in the first place. Marcus Aurelius, one of the greatest Stoic philosophers and emperors, wrote in his Meditations, "Think of yourself as dead. You have lived your life. Now take what's left and live it properly." What does this mean? It means that the past is gone and the future is uncertain. The only thing that truly belongs to you is this moment, right here, right now. The only thing you can truly control is how you live, think, and act in this present moment. Everything else is beyond your grasp, and accepting that is the key to true freedom. Too many people spend their lives hoping that someone else will be their constant, their foundation, their unshakable support. But the truth is, no one can do that for you. Not your parents, not your partner, not your friends. Even if they stay by your side for decades, even if they love you with all they have, there will come a day when they can no longer walk beside you. And when that day comes, will you collapse or will you stand tall? It's time to stop running from this truth. It's time to face it head on, because once you do, everything changes. You stop wasting energy fearing loss. You stop trying to control things that are beyond your reach. You stop relying on others to define your worth. Instead, you begin to build something no one can ever take from you, an inner strength so unbreakable that no loss, no betrayal, no departure can destroy it. Here's your challenge. For the next 7 days, live as though you have no one to rely on. Don't seek comfort in conversations. Don't wait for someone to entertain you, reassure you, or validate you. Find joy in your own presence. Make decisions without asking for approval. Face challenges without looking for support. At first, it will feel unnatural. Your mind will crave distractions. Your emotions will pull you back toward the familiar safety of connection. But if you resist that urge, if you truly commit to this challenge, something remarkable will happen. You'll begin to see that you're stronger than you ever imagined. That the solitude you once feared isn't empty. It's full of potential. You'll discover that the person you are when no one is watching isn't incomplete. It's the truest version of yourself. This isn't about pushing people away or rejecting love, friendship, or connection. It's about ensuring that if everything were to disappear tomorrow, you would still be whole. It's about learning how to move through life without fear, without dependency, without holding on to the illusion that anything outside of yourself is permanent. Most people will hear this message and ignore it. They'll return to their distractions, their attachments, their fragile sense of security. They'll keep building their lives on shaky foundations and hope nothing ever shakes them. But you have a choice. You can step into a level of freedom few will ever experience. A freedom that comes from knowing that no matter what happens, you are enough. The question is, are you brave enough to accept it? Everything we've talked about today is more than just words. It's a call to action, a challenge to break free from the illusion that anyone else can complete you. The world has taught us to seek happiness in relationships, validation, and approval. But Stoicism teaches us a deeper truth. True peace comes only from within. So now I ask you, what will you do with this truth? Will you let it fade into the background as old habits pull you back into dependence? Or will you take the first step toward unshakable strength? Here's your challenge for the next 7 days. Detach yourself from external validation. Stop waiting for replies, attention, or reassurance from others. Find joy in your own company. Make decisions without seeking approval. Face challenges without leaning on anyone else for support. It won't be easy. It might even feel uncomfortable. But discomfort is the price of transformation. The only way to be truly free is to stand alone and be okay with it. Now I want to hear from you. What is the one thing in your life that you're most afraid of losing? And if it disappeared tomorrow, would you still be standing? Share your thoughts in the comments below. Your story might inspire someone else to take this journey alongside you. If this message resonated with you, if it challenged how you see yourself, don't forget to hit the like button and share this video with someone who needs to hear it today. And make sure to subscribe to For Successful Life DH for more lessons on Stoicism, resilience, and personal freedom. As Marcus Aurelius once said, you have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength. So I leave you with this final question. Will you take control of your mind? Or will you remain a prisoner of the world around you? The choice is yours.